This is Rich Straffolino with the Department of No. Brett Conlon, the CISO at American Century Investments. I got to ask, what's been your priority this week?
I think everything has been consuming around, I'm going to say two topics, AI, but also the GitHub repositories with the NPM issues. So I think we're going to talk about some of that. That's pretty cool.
Most definitely digging into that. Cannot wait. But first, we got to ask Jason Thomas, Senior Director, Technology Security, Governance, and Risk at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. What has been your priority this week?
I've been shepherding the early stages of a refresh of a maturity assessment we had done a few years ago. So that's been herding cats, if you will.
Shepherding in a distressingly literal sense, I feel. Fantastic.
Come all of ye to enjoy an interview with all of us about.
Well, at least there's less people here to wrangle, so I hope this will serve as some relief. But we got to get into the show, so let's run that opening and let's get into the news.
From the CISO series, it's Department of No.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Department of No, your virtual Friday strategy meeting. So thrilled that you could make it with us today if you are joining us live. And if you're not joining us live, remember, you can shoot us some feedback at CISOseries.com through good old electronic mail. It's one of my favorite ways to communicate in cyberspace. Also, huge thanks to our sponsor for today, helping make the show possible. Doppel, we'll be hearing more about them in just a second. If you are joining us live, be sure you are getting involved in our chat. We like to see everybody getting involved there. So let us know what you think about the news as we are running it down here. If you disagree, if you agree, if you're apathetic, I don't know. That would be weird for you to send a message in that regard, but I'm open to the possibility. Just a quick reminder before we jump into the news that all the opinions expressed on the show are in fact those of our guests and myself, not necessarily those of any of our employers. We've got about 30 minutes though, so let's dive in. We got to start out with no or no. This is where there are so many stories to talk about. We've got to cover a couple of them a little bit quicker, find out if they're a big deal, talk about with your security teams, or hey, good to know, but don't need to bring it to the team. First up here, the continuing saga of Nightmare Eclipse. Okay, so just hours after Microsoft had its biggest patch Tuesday ever, the security researcher known as Nightmare Eclipse, name changes have gone on, but Eclipse seems to be consistent here, released exploit code for a new Microsoft Defender flaw called Rogue Planet. They claim works on fully patched Windows 10 and 11 systems. The bug could let an attacker gain system-level access or system-level control of a machine, and early testing by ThreatLocker and security researcher Will Dorman suggests the exploit is real, although not completely reliable. It involves a race condition, and that's why. Jason, this is clearly not great for Microsoft or for security teams to be put in this position. I'm curious, though, do we need to know more about this particular exploit, or do we need to dig into why researchers are suddenly shrugging at responsible disclosure practices, at least when it comes to Microsoft?
I don't know about how much the particular exploit, simply because it's been the challenge with a couple of the exploits from Nightmare Eclipse has been how easily they are to replicate, and some have been easier than others. But I think it does really speak to, hey, why are researchers all of a sudden not digging responsible disclosure policies? And at the same time, the flip of that is, well, why did Microsoft have a rather antagonistic and somewhat legal response? Well, really veiled threat, not really a veiled threat, a threat that was, we'll basically sue you and litigate you into oblivion. And which again doesn't help matters at all. So, it's a catch-22. We have somebody who clearly has an axe to grind. And we have a vendor that's like, yeah, it's great. You're not telling us the way we want to, so we're just gonna go ahead and go thermonuclear.
Brett, this reminds me of like when me and my brother would get into a fight and my mom would just make us stand nose to nose until we started laughing. Like, does someone just need to be like, you seem to both care about the same thing. What's going on here, Brett? Like, what's your take on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, that would be a great solution. Let me know how that works out between Microsoft, the company, and this one person.
I'll get Satya. He'll just sit down and he has a tight five. He can do this. Yeah.
See, I don't do nose to nose. I did nose to wall, and then just let me know when you've come up to the same solution, right? But to me, the thing that I just want the team to know and what we go over is it's really not about the vulnerability. It's the shrinking window, right, between the disclosure and the exploitation.
Yep.
So we have to assume that the race starts the moment the vulnerability is exploitable. And that's really what I want them focused on. So less about the actual exploit itself and more about the changing of the pace. And I think we're going to see this more now.
I think to add to Brett's point, it's ensuring that you understand that once your patches hit the street, if you will, the race is on for exploit, right? So it's almost though the race really is on is patch and patch as quick as you can. If you haven't done it, if you're not doing it automated, and if you're automated, great, make sure that time that delta is tight. And this just reinforces that.
All right, next up here, speaking of things that maybe might help you patch, not right now at least, Anthropic releases Claude Fable 5. Now, ever since Mythos Preview was announced, everyone's been itching to get access to that model under Project Glasswing. Access is slowly being rolled out. A general release of Mythos, though, still seems to be a way off, but Anthropic is getting closer, releasing the Mythos class Fable 5 model. Anthropic says this model operates similarly to Mythos in terms of knowledge work, vision, and long-running tasks, but has targeted blocks in place specifically for cybersecurity and biology, two areas where they are concerned about misuse, understandably. For those, Fable falls back to Opus 4.8 responses. It seems like the guardrails here are extremely broad. One of the top posts on the R cybersecurity subreddit was simply titled Fable 5 is unusable at this point. Seems like anything from asking it to read specific blog posts to writing secure code can trigger a fallback at this point. Very broad controls here. Brett, at this point, do we need to know more about Fable 5, or should we wait until cybersecurity isn't verboten for these models? Like, it seems like this is like keyword blocks level of access here.
I'm going to do a show first. Maybe it's a show first and say a soft no, N-O. I think it's a great technology story. I'm not sure it's a major enterprise security story yet. So to me, the question isn't whether Fable 5 is good. It's whether we're creating AI that's so restricted it can't effectively help defenders while attackers continue to use unrestricted tools. So the team has to be aware of it. I will say my heart dropped a little bit when they called it Fable 5/Mythos 5, but I don't think it's a story right now. I think we're still trying to see what the industry is going to do between balancing capability and safety.
Hey, Jason, I see you nodding your head here. Are you in agreement?
Yeah, it's okay. Great, you're giving a tease, right? It's like we've talked all about this. We've been talking all about it. There's a select group of people that know about this thing, but it's over there. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to gesture at it. And then we're gonna, oh look, here's this thing. It kind of does it, but not really. Okay, great. We need to be aware. We need to be ready. But at the same time, it's okay, great. You've got me on tender hooks, but now what? It's like a hurry up and wait again.
James in our chat, James Sparrenberger, we love him on LinkedIn, saying Claude Fable just got jailbroken. I've seen some reports on that. I know Anthropic is disputing the terms of that. They were very adamant to say that they had done a ton of external pen testing and stuff like that on Fable 5. We know at some point someone's going to figure out the secret sauce to get it to do that, and then they will iterate on that endlessly. Like that is the new cat and mouse game for so many of these models. But good to know. That was the thing I was most surprised about. Like, they were bragging about how hard these guardrails were to block. I was like, you're just asking for trouble, guys. Have you met people? They are absolutely the worst. And CCL, nice to see you in the chat as well. All right, next up here, a big week for the Miasma worm. The ongoing self-replicating supply chain attack campaign hit 73 Microsoft-owned GitHub repositories across 4 of its GitHub organizations, including some big names. You may have heard of them: Azure, Azure Samples, Microsoft, and Microsoft Docs. And that's according to open source malware. The development has forced GitHub to disable access to those repositories. As opposed to being a standalone attack, this particular campaign involves the recompromise of the durable task PyPy package, which was infected by Team PCP last month to deliver an information stealer on Linux systems. And in related news, if you didn't have enough Miasma in your life, the source code was briefly published on GitHub through compromised developer accounts. So more madness, although some sunshine there is not necessarily, I guess, the worst thing. I'm kind of torn on that. Anyway, Brett, I'm curious here, as we're looking here at another software supply chain story. We see these on an almost daily basis at this point. This one directly impacts Microsoft, though. So you want to know more, or is it no thanks for you?
So I'm going to say we do want to know, but again, it's more the theme. I want to stress back with the team that this is the evolution of the software supply chain attack. They are going against the entire development ecosystem. So attackers are going to they used to target production systems. Now they're targeting the software factory itself. So compromising one developer compromises everything. And so I want them to hear about that, but more, again, the broader messaging of we have another example and what are we doing about it?
Jason, I see a nod in here. Are we in agreement here?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think again, it's the same hits the same as the last one, which is here's yet another supply chain attack, and we're going to go after your source repositories, and but while it's great that the source code leaked, the problem is just like its predecessor, it's going to someone's going to get it, they're going to make it better, and but the going we've it's funny how the attack sort of changed, right? Your attack surface was I'm going to find a host. Then it became I'm going to find your edge devices. Now I'm going to compromise your builds and your dev repositories, because once I get in on the software hook, all bets are off. And that's probably the hardest one. I think this is just an example of how hard that supply chain is, especially when we've really kind of as an industry kind of moved to open source a lot, and what we once sort of trusted, we really can't.
I mean, so yeah, I mean, we'll get into some kind of some zero trust reactions to this, but as an industry, like, are we built? Is the reason that software supply chain attacks are just eating everybody is because we just didn't assume that these could be capable at this kind of scale? Or, I mean, right? We all saw the XKCD cartoon, right? We all knew that there was the little block holding up everything else, right?
I think it's a combination of as an industry, I think we kind of trusted the faith of everybody who does it, that there's sort of an altruistic motive in providing that common good, and no one thought around I don't think anybody ever it's sort of the failure of imagination to think that somebody would decide to go after the very things that comprise it, right? I mean, a way to think of it is you take a key thing that's just how you let's take building material, let's find a way to make cement much weaker, so oops, great. And everything just keeps collapsing. So nobody thought about it, but here we are, and I think we trusted the altruistic nature of open source, but I think we also kind of ran to it because we saw the flip of how bad sort of closed and proprietary source was.
I'm going to just go ahead and repeat my theme that 2026 is the year that all the assumptions about open source are tested all at once at scales never before imaginable. Copyright, trademark, Rich Struffolino 2026. All right, our next story here. French government messaging service breached. The Digital Affairs Directorate of the French government, DINM, warned that threat actors breached the government encrypted messaging app TCHAP, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologize, French people, which is based on the Matrix protocol. DINM said a threat actor gained access to the service through a compromised user account. A threat actor taking credit for the breach said they stole hard-coded LDAP credentials shared by the French tax authority and stole over 13 gigabytes of documents, as well as information on over 73,000 accounts. I'm going to go with this seems not great. We've seen a few Matrix-based government messaging services being targeted this year. I'm curious, Jason, for you, is there anything you want to know more about with this attack, or is this just another edition of attackers don't hack in, they log in?
I'm kind of the latter. I think it's attackers don't hack, they're logging in. I mean, it's how much more is there to know? Okay, great. They comped credentials, they got in, they pilfered what they could and pieced out. And okay, great. But I think it doesn't bode well for what I would call bespoke or custom messaging systems, right? It's kind of making the lifetime of those not as great as they once were. But at the same time, if my creds are compromised and I've got stuff in places it probably shouldn't be in said messaging system, I'm cooked.
Brett, what about for you? Is there anything that stood out here, or is this a big splashy target but familiar story?
Familiar story. It's the reiteration of the message, though. Again, to me, if you're struggling with your development teams and you're struggling with them trying to, talk about developer velocity versus taking care of tech debt, here we go again. Like, I don't know when the first person who coined they don't hack in, they log in, but hard-coded credentials, compromised accounts, this is not new. And here we go again. And so to me, the message to my team is, here we go again, but also, and so what's our message to the development teams we have another great example to bring this home of, and here's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and if that's, I feel like if that's the silver lining, right? Of like, hey, we have a big shiny example. You saw this on, Reuters and stuff. This is something that gets mainstream coverage. If that makes that conversation easier, puts it more top of mind. If everybody can, if this can be the rising tide that floats all boats, let's do it. Probably won't be. I'm sure we'll cover another story that's like this next week, but I am hopeful. And Brett, thank you for giving me a little bit of hope. What's also giving me a little bit of hope is that we have a sponsor for today, like we do every single week. And I'm going to spend a few moments thanking them. Our sponsor for today, thank you so much, is Doppel. Cyber criminals don't respect your security silos. They use one connected attack chain to hit your brand externally, infiltrate your inbox, and manipulate your team. Stop playing whack-a-mole with fragmented tools. Doppel unifies digital risk protection, human risk management, and email security into one unified platform. One attack chain, 3 pillars of defense, 0 blind spots. Secure your enterprise relentlessly at Doppel.com. That's DOPPEL.com. All right, let's do some deep dive in here. First up here, CISA wants feds to patch lickety-split. The agency is tightening federal patching requirements, giving other agencies 3 days to fix the highest risk vulnerabilities. How do they define these? Well, these are actively exploited, internet-facing, automatable, and capable of giving attackers control of a system, otherwise known as ouch. CISA officials say this is necessary because AI is making it easier for attackers to find and exploit vulnerabilities at scale. You don't say. CISA says not every bug needs urgent attention, but those dangerous ones can't sit unpatched for weeks anymore. I believe currently the KVE is 30 days from date of adding there to patch those. So this is a significant escalation of that timeline. Brett, I'm curious for you, as always, devil is in the details here. Is there any kind of lag from understanding, like, hey, the exploit, like, my first thought is there's inherently going to be some lag in classifying these. We're already seeing, NVD having all sorts of problem enriching data, getting that there. Is this possible, and what are going to be the stumbling blocks for this kind of quick timetable for the feds?
Yeah, so this is not going to be about patch management. It's going to be about operational maturity. So if it sounds aggressive, but then when you sit there and go, it's exploited, internet facing, it's automatable, right? Capable of full compromise, all of that makes sense. But the challenge is not going to be applying patches. It's going to be knowing exactly where you're exposed enough to make an informed decision. So if you have an organization that's strong asset inventory, exposure management, continuous discovery, automated patching, you're good to go. But if you don't have that visibility, then you're going to have a problem. So how much of that 3-day window are you going to spend patching versus figuring out whether you're vulnerable in the first place? The maturity metric isn't patch speed in this one. It's going to be knowing your environment well enough to act with confidence, I would say.
And
Probably,
Jason, I'm sorry, and probably a little bit more around, not just knowing your environment, but knowing your attack surface, right? So, but the two kind of go hand in hand. But one, I can know my environment, but two, if I've leaned out and tried to reduce my attack surface as much as possible, I've helped to create a little bit of I've created a little bit of a running room, if you will. So I think that's Brett's spot on. It's not about how quick you can patch, but I also think the other thing it kind of reinforces is if you're not doing anything if you're not paying attention to Kev at all, probably should, right? It's probably a good time to do so. The other part that sort of I'm a little bit concerned about though is whether CISA, right? There's been with everything that's happened at the federal level from a funding perspective, and what's happened with CISA, how much do we want to how much credence do we want to give the lifetime of things and that binding directive and Kev, we've seen what's happened with NVD. What's that look like, right? How much it was great to a point, but in the last year, I've kind of looked at it a little side eye of how much I want to dig into that, or better rely on it as a great metric.
My other question is, given the speed at finding vulnerabilities and presumably the mean time to exploit vulnerabilities once found, that window is also incredibly shrinking, I would imagine. Is 3 days, like, yes, better than 30, right? Is that could you still get into a world of hurt, right, within a 3-day window? I guess, is there any window where this becomes reasonable, given we can assume the speed to exploit is going to be even faster?
I mean, that's where that to me is where, the mythos piece is going to come play a big part too, right? Is there going to be a shift in the area of responsibility? So right now, if you look at things, sure, there's certain things that we can patch almost same day and have limited impact.
Yep.
But when you're talking about patching operating systems that then screw up libraries that the development teams use, or you have libraries that will break your actual production systems if you patch them too quick. I'm hoping that what's happening behind the scenes is we're re-looking at how we build code as a whole, because shouldn't we be to a point now, especially if we're really going to be finding vulnerabilities this quick, that some of these things we can sit there and go, these can be patched and they will not affect your pipelines. They will not affect your systems. That's really where we're going to have to go so that we can patch with confidence on that. But I still think, and it's unfortunate that we're still having these conversations, but you have to know your environment. You've got to figure that stuff out, right? It's an absolute must.
CCL in our chat is in agreement with you, Brett, saying the ask is a side effect. Mature organization will use something like blue or green development to perform automatic patching anyway. I'm curious from our audience here. This is the story that I want to hear from our community. One, what you think of this, particularly for federal agencies, but for your own, in your own experience, does 3 days seem reasonable? I want to know. Feedback at CISOseries.com. Send us an email. Send us a video. I would love to hear from it. We'd love to feature your reactions to the story on the show. So please send them in. All right, next up here, our next story for our deep dive here: GitHub to disable NPM install scripts by default to stop supply chain attacks. We're going to solve it, guys. It's this easy. GitHub has announced what it describes as breaking changes coming to NPM version 12, one of which turns off install scripts by default to combat software supply chain threats. These changes are designed to deal with attack techniques that abuse the npm install command to trigger the execution of malicious code using npm lifecycle hooks. GitHub describes install time lifecycle scripts as the single largest code execution surface in the NPM ecosystem. The idea going forward is to require explicit user approval before code execution is initiated automatically during NPM install, as opposed to being trusted by default. Brett, this seems like a big step towards zero trust on GitHub, or at least in NPM specifically here. But you were passionate bringing this, into the rundown here. I'm curious, can you help contextualize this for us? How big of a deal is, or how big of a problem is this? What does this solve? What does this still leave out there?
Yeah, so I'm actually very happy they did this. We were on 2 different threat calls this week around this specific topic, because the biggest problem was visibility, what's going on, and then the steps that most organizations had available to them broke too many things for them to really take actionable steps. So to me, it's probably one of the more important software supply chain security changes in years. But it's crazy to think about. Security is trust but verify. And look at what it's telling you. We're changing the default trust model, which was trusted. Automatic execution is no longer assumed. And then that's a fundamental security shift for us. So if you think about, for us, like, we've accepted downloading software could automatically execute code on our machines. We've gotten used to that. And then the attackers exploited that trust relationship long before the defenders fully appreciated the risk. So now GitHub is moving to implicit trust to explicit authorization. So we're going to not trust it anymore, and we're going to allow us to verify it, which I think is great. It definitely increases. It's not going to stop everything, but it's going to increase the attacker cost, which, as we know, reduces the attack scale at that point.
Yeah, Jason, for you, does this change kind of the incentive for these kind of style attacks? At least, again, NPM, GitHub, like those are non-trivial giant surfaces that this could impact.
So this is where Jason gets to show how shallow his sweet AppSec knowledge is. At the same time, I've benefited in professionally from where we are. This makes sense, right? I mean, it's how this was to me, this is like, well, we have it's the old window open. How open is your window analogy, right? And so now we've closed it a little bit more, and that's great. But there's still this just kind of continues to reinforce, though, the problem that we have with all of the supply chain attacks, which is having to really change how we've trusted things, having to, and to some extent, changing our behavior from where we've trusted patching, right? Well, let me rephrase. I'm sorry, not trusted patching, but trusting new. Oh, hey, that thing's new and it's updated. I should have that right now, right this second. Go, go, go. And as a result, it's kind of, your hand has touched the stove. It's now been burned by that. So now you're not doing that as much anymore. And yet here's another step in that. And Brett's point's right? How you change that trust model is important. I think this only can bode well. The question becomes how soon before others do something similar with the libraries that they maintain.
Is there a danger? I mean, I'm thinking of everything from Windows Vista to like me using Claude today. Is there the danger of click to run, the equivalent of that, of just being like, yeah, just do the thing, npm. Come on. I guess, yes, I can understand from GitHub's perspective why they don't want to be responsible for stuff just automatically running. Makes perfect sense. Is there how do you build that into your team to not just be like, yeah, keep going there, to intentionally hit that speed block?
I think it's hard, right?
Yeah.
You sort of need these changes to occur. But what's funny is if you go back and look at what we're doing around identities, around the network, around software now, every advancement that's a major advancement removes the implicit trust.
Yeah.
It's the only true way for us to make sure that we're doing something securely. So, this is a start. We've talked a lot about making sure that you've got signed packages, making sure that there's a way to verify that that's the actual release version from the vendor or the open source community. It'd be great if we start seeing this at an enterprise level, but I'll take the step in the right direction over.
Yeah. I don't mean to criticize this. Yeah, I just, I know humans and, laziness and I need to get this off my plate usually wins unless other incentives are put in place, right?
Right. Expediency always wins. And the regrettable part is expediency always tends to win out over the thoughtful and contemplative way that it probably needs to be done. And Brett's comment around, again, the sort of the trust problem continues, right? If you think about how we've also shifted our, what we now sort of just implicitly trust as a result. It goes up and down. All the SaaS platforms that we implicitly trust that do all the things they do with all the data they have. You could kind of go down that rabbit hole and then really come up and have to have some good therapy time with somebody who's professional, because it's not. If you really sit back and start to think about that, you're like, oh my God, we're doomed.
Listen, I mean, first of all, we should all be in more therapy. Like, let's just be real right there. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, Jason. But yes, point well taken. All right, we got to get to our last story today because it's kind of the greatest duo story. This is made for perfect Department of No fodder here. We just have this as don't hate, hallucinate here. Senior United States District Judge for the Northern District of Mississippi, Sherian Aycock, quality judge name, by the way, issued a sanctions order against both sides of a federal court case, saying this court is yet again burdened with addressing AI hallucinations in court filings. Unlike a lot of these stories that we see, both sides cited non-existent hallucinated cases in their arguments in what was described as paying for ChatGPT to argue against itself. Bravo, a fine bit of sophistry there. In related news, researchers at GPT-0 found that a report from KPMG included 40 out of 45 citations that seemed to have been AI hallucinations, with half of its factual claims either false, unsupported, or attributed to the wrong source. Obviously, both tremendous stories that we have here. Can't go wrong with either one. But I'm curious. Let's extrapolate what we're seeing here in both of these cases here. What's the equivalent in cybersecurity where AI is where we're unwittingly putting AI talking to each other due to human apathy or some other reason here? And where do you think the danger is for this kind of hallucinatory exchange here? Jason, let me start with you here.
So I don't have a good answer to where we have done that, where there's AI v AI. I think there might be some, we haven't quite, I'd like to think that we haven't quite gone down that path yet. I think though it does, the one thing I really do think that it speaks to is, I think the blind acceptance of what the bot spits out at you, and like just taking that forward to be like, this is great. And it's almost as though we've totally forgotten the fact that, well, the bots made this stuff based on knowledge that came from humans. Humans are fallible, ergo this should be fallible. Maybe I should double check this, right? It's, measure twice. It's the old measure twice, cut once argument. But we're just, nope. It's great. It's great. Came from Claude, came from Copilot. Let's go. Just jam it in. It'll be totally fine. Totally fine. And
yeah, we trained it on our
right.
Our code base or whatever. Yeah, it must be good. Yeah,
right. Yeah. And I love stories where lawyers get busted by judges because of their AI usage. Right. You can't get enough of that. And it's like, and the best part of the one story is the lawyer had gotten busted for it before. And I'm like,
yeah,
you didn't learn your lesson. You like paying thousands of dollars in fines and
being barred from that court for years, like non-trivial punishments. Yeah.
Okay.
Brett, where are you at?
I'm gonna bring this home for you real quick.
Yes.
This is a little bit for you, Rich, but this is like the equivalent of the show Burn Notice. You're getting burned, right? You're using AI, you're not validating and checking, and you're getting burned.
Yep.
And you're getting ousted from the court, or what I would see, the dangers I would see is a couple different things. And we do talk about our teams on this. First is, prompt engineering is important, what the prompt is saying. And if you're having help developing that prompt, maybe use a different model than the one you're going to be using the prompt on, right? Because that's going to be your first hallucination. But taking AI written incident reports, AI generated threat intel, AI created risk assessments, and just having that feed directly into whatever you're doing without any human validation. So the message to my team is, would you ever take a product like this from your team and never look at it? And if the answer is no, then why would you allow it to feed directly from AI into your artifacts? And so, bad inputs can become strategic decisions if we don't do that, and that's going to amplify the mistakes.
In speed and quickly, right? So I think that it's the bad input / lack of significant input, right? These things do better the more information you feed it. Right. And here you are, and how are things getting created? But I think the speediness is the other problem, right? In times past, you didn't have the quick turnaround. Now you do, and now you have to you sort of suffer the consequences of basically poor input and poor prompt engineering that spits out something that's bad. And Brett's point's right. Would you say, what would you do with something else?
Yeah, do you remember? Back in the day could have been like 10 days ago, but
it feels like it was 10. It feels like 10 days ago, but it was probably 20 years ago. But yeah, case in point.
But like the most dangerous person in the meeting is the person who's confidently answering the wrong answer or giving the wrong answers because everyone just believes the confidence, right?
Right.
And that's AI. That it has the ability to do that.
That's why I was excited, and not just for Microsoft specifically, but some of the stuff coming out of Build where they're talking about giving more like human level readability into one, agent intent, two, like how to build the workflows for those agents, to when to bring human in the loop. As DC Johnson pointed out, it's Copilot, not autopilot. Always something. That's a great phrase. DC Johnson, get that on a shirt. I will buy it. Although Copilot might get in trouble with that. Don't capitalize it. You're fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Anyway, but yeah, I was thinking about this as you guys were talking. I think there was one place in cybersecurity where we might have AI talking to AI, and I don't know if anyone's going to say it's necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like there are a lot of vendor sales cold call emails that are being sent by an LLM, and there's some CISO's email inbox that is sending them an LLM generated message back.
Nobody here on this call has ever used an AI agent to reply to an email from a vendor ever, right? No.
I'm not pointing any fingers, right? I'm not judging anybody. Listen, you got to do what you're good. Oh yes, DC Johnson, co-pilot.
There you go. Way to avoid the litigation.
Get it on a shirt. All right, before we get out of here, my advice is DC Johnson, start making t-shirts and sell them, and I will buy some. But the other thing I have to ask is, Brett, let me start with you here. This is our Advice Spot segment where we like to leave our audience with a little piece of advice based on our conversation today. You're thinking about a lot of big, meaty topics in here. What piece of advice would you give our audience before we get out of here?
I would say that across all of these topics, everything is about the collapse of implicit trust. So you need to look at what you're doing to trust, but verify. And I can't express that enough. Start with the identities, start knowing what your environment's looking like. And I really think going back to all these basic things that we talk about all the time is really going to help what we're experiencing today.
The rebirth of explicit trust, perhaps, is the opportunity we have in this moment. Jason, what about for you? What piece of advice would you leave our audience?
Like Brett, I think one of the things that's getting reinforced is this is all sort of the basics and hygiene and things we've learned and probably forgotten and long ago, but still are things that are important today. Embedding credentials probably not a great idea, right? Hard coded all the things we've talked about that have come up, years, all these decades. Oh God, it's been that long. It's true, it's like we instead of learning our lesson, we just keep repeating it, that repetition just gets worse and worse because the scale gets, the blast radius of that is just so much wider. I think it sort of reinforces the need to have those conversations with your teams and with the people you work with around doing the basics and doing them right and making sure that those are sort of done, because that will save you a lot of pain and suffering later.
We all have too much of pain and suffering already. We all have too much pain and suffering. We all need to go to therapy. Those are my two lessons here. Reiterate, please take care of your mental health. Thank you so much to everybody who watched the live stream, is listening to this later, consuming it in any way that you like. I don't know how else you would, maybe as a visual sensory experience. I don't know how people consume this. I don't care as long as you're enjoying it and you're getting something out of it. But thanks to James, to CCL, to the DC Johnson, to Schmooze, to everybody that was getting involved in our chat. You help make the show all that much better. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend, and I hope our guests have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much to Brett Conlon, the CISO over at American Century Investments, and Jason Thomas, Senior Director over at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. We'll have links to both of their LinkedIn profiles if you want to give them a follow in our show notes, so make sure you check that out. Thanks also so much to our sponsor for today, Doppel, for helping make the show possible. Remember, send us feedback anytime, feedback@CISOseries.com. I want to know what you think of that CISA 3-day patching rule, and I want to know, send us your thoughts. Where are we seeing AI talking to AI kind of unmonitored with consequences in cybersecurity? I would love to hear if you have seen this in the wild, something the equivalent of two lawyers arguing with ChatGPT against each other. Let me know. Feedback@CISOseries.com. Remember to join us next Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Department of No. Thank you so much for joining our Friday stand-up. Have a great week. Stay secure out there. For myself, for the entire CISO series team, for the big boss man, David Spark, and for all fine folk in cybersecurity, here's wishing you and yours to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOseries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.